I'm thinking about divorcing her.
My kids are out of control.
I'm not hurting anyone with my choices.
I thought they were my friends.
Should I quit my job?
I'm just gonna wing it.
I don't want to work anymore.
Follow your passion.
Believe you can do it and you will.
Everything happens for a reason.
Fake it till you make it.
Be yourself.
Take risk.
Never give up.
Green Ninja? And the legendary ultimate weapon? It's not fair. I just conquered Ninjago.
This is your last chance. Get out of Ninjago now and forever.
But nothing is happening. Why is nothing happening?
What is that?
Generals, grab the Green Ninja.
Wait, no!
Let's try it on some moving targets.
No!
What is this thing?
Bang, I win. Cue the music. What? Are you gonna cry?
I'm not gonna cry. Dad.
Lloyd?
That's right. It's me, your son. And it's Lloyd, Dad.
No. Lloyd. I named you.
You ruined my life.
How could I ruin your life? I wasn't even there.
I wish you weren't my father.
How could I ruin your life when I wasn't even there? Sometimes as parents, we are not the most stellar at communicating, even seeing how we are failing at parenting and contributing to our kids' rebellion and how they are distancing themselves from us. All that we see are the problems that we are facing and how they're contributing to these dynamics that are making life difficult for us. And we begin to see how they're straying. Parenting, no doubt, can be difficult. It can be an exhausting role to fill. And in the past, I have honestly found myself telling parents many times that the problem with parenting is that kids don't come with an instruction manual when they are born. And it's true, right? While there is truth to that, kids are not born with a manual or a care tag like a pillow or a blanket. One of the things that I failed to point out is that just like marriage was designed with a purpose and structure in mind, there is also a structure and purpose that is there for raising kids. These are house structure rules. So being a parent and the relationship between kids is something that the Bible tackles a lot, as we're going to be talking about today. One of the things that can happen, though, is just like with marriage, it can get on track, even if you screwed it up, or it could get off balance. And here's the thing that you have to remember about parenting and kids. Just like marriage, both contribute to its failure or to its success. So the conditions at home that you're experiencing with your kids is contributed by both. In order for those roles to operate according to its design within the household, wisdom is required. Now, the reason that experience doesn't cut it in parenting is because each kid is different. So the experience that you had with your first kid might not be the same experience that you have with your second kid. And I can tell you that having 6 kids who are uniquely different, the same approach to parenting doesn't work. What may be meaningful to one may not be as meaningful to another. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not appreciated. It just doesn't register the same. What interests one may not interest another. Having, once again, a family of 8, going through the drive-thru and ordering for a family of 8, which it's a family that lives in the same household. We do the same things. We can't eat, it's so complex in ketchup, no ketchup, pickles, extra pickles, mustard, right? It's just so difficult because each one is uniquely different. And that's if we could actually all agree on the same restaurant that we should eat at, right? So where we fail at is not these little things that make us different. I'm not telling you that you should figure out how, as a parent, you should figure out how you can all order the same thing. Where we're failing at parenting is in the big things that we all crave and desire. And those are the things that we desired or even continue to desire from our parents for them to do, or that we at times as parents fail to do. So before we go any further, just like with any other topic, this could be a sensitive topic for some, or it may seem like it's just inapplicable to others. The reason that it may be a difficult topic for some is because there is a desire to be a parent, but that prayer has not been answered or fulfilled yet. For others, it may be knowing that their kids are grown up, and it seems like it's too late to change the course of their lives. And if they could have only done things differently, and now they're living in regret. So it just seems like an inapplicable sermon. Two scenarios that can make the topic of parenting difficult are these: not having kids or having kids that are out of the house. It seems, once again, like you're too late to the party. But if you're here, let me reassure you that it is applicable to you, even if you have kids that are out of the house or don't have kids. Because if you're here in the room, bless you, if you're here in the room, you have parents. And whether they are or they aren't around, to some extent, here's a reason that this is applicable. Parents shape the people that we are today. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So wisdom helps us to understand not only how to navigate decision-making, but how to change the trajectory of our lives for the better. So if you haven't done the greatest job at parenting, it's not too late. If you're doing a stellar job at parenting, then take more wisdom. Be encouraged. So in the 5th chapter of the letter to the church in Ephesus, which we talked about last week, Paul described God's structure, roles, purpose, and design for marriage. And as many may be familiar with, as we're talking about the way that God structured this, let's just use a rhyme, a kid's rhyme. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes baby in a baby carriage. Once again, not only a children's rhyme, but God's design for creation. And after marriage, which we talked about in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 21 through 33, we talked about the role and function between a husband and a wife that typically is dysfunctional. I would say that the majority of households are operating in dysfunction in marriage. I've been guilty of that in the past, and I know that I still screw up even now. But once again, that's where it starts. Then it kind of dwindles down to the following chapter, which continues within the household relationships. When you begin to be married with children. So starting with verse 1, chapter 6 says, "Children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. If you honor your father and mother, things will go well for you, and you will have a long life on earth." Marriage, this is the way that it operates. Children. Okay. Bear with me as I'm about to make a statement that may rub you the wrong way. More than anything, bear with me by listening until I finish with what I'm saying. Having worked with teenagers for the majority of my time in ministry, this this command, this passage, even as we go into the Ten Commandments, it's a difficult passage for me to talk to teens about. It really is. Whether people are practicing Christians, and that's a loose word, or not, this becomes a golden rule at home. This is what we tell our kids to abide by. Culturally, once again, whether you're a Christian or not, this at times will become the command that is laying out the foundation for dysfunction at home. So please hear me out when I say that I am not questioning the validity of the command. I'm not even questioning the beauty and design for its purpose. I'm being extremely honest when I say the reason that this command becomes difficult for me to talk with teens about is that I have met teens whose parents' way of being honored is anything but honorable. It's embarrassing. And I'm not talking about in a sick, illegal, or sadistic way, at least from what was shared with me. But they are parents that are living as fools that are either leading by their foolishness or encouraging by their behavior. There is nothing honorable about that. So now, if we were to take a leap on this, right? And let's just say that now we're faced with parents who have overstepped the boundaries of what is moral. The question becomes, so based on this command that we form our foundation at home, if the parent is crossing the boundary, are children still to obey and to honor their father and mother? Do you understand why I have a difficult part with this? And the answer, in short, is no. Because there's a moral dilemma. Why would a child honor and obey parents when they're crossing the boundaries and structure of what God designed? And we can see biblically that from the household to the government, we're finding examples of how sometimes government and people overstep boundaries. We find examples of, in the book of Exodus, of genocide by the command of Pharaoh, all the way to the book of Acts, chapter 5, verse 29, where it clearly lays out that there is a point that comes where we are to obey God rather than obeying man. And I would say this is exactly how it falls in the household. Being a parent doesn't make you somebody that is to be submitted to when there is nothing honorable about what you're asking your children to do. I'll give you a flat-out example. If you're at a store and you ask your kid to take something, they have every right to say no. That's not something that they should obey you on. There's moral dilemmas. Now, once again, does that diminish the value of Scripture? And the answer is no. But understand that the dysfunction starts with where our dysfunction begins. And it is important to state that as parents, if you are putting your kids in a moral dilemma that is sinful, evil, or abusive, they have no reason to obey or to honor you. And just like husbands will use the Bible to justify their roles without measuring up to their responsibilities, parents will do the same thing with this command. They demand honor without trying to live up to its design. And as I say this, I know that it's direct, and understand that I'm not trying to undermine the structure or the command that God has established. That's definitely not it, because I believe that we should honor and obey father and mother. And I'm not suggesting as teens to rebel against your parents either. Children, teens, adults with parents, understand that your parents' failure to live up to God's design does not excuse you from living up to yours. If your parents fail, that is not an excuse for you. But as parents, it is essential for us to see the blind spots in how we're parenting. We're failing at that. If we continue to read the passage that addresses life at home for kids and teens, once again, Ephesians chapter 6 started off by addressing the teens, or the children, but it follows up by addressing the parents. Just like when it addressed a woman, it addresses the husband. Because there's a way that it works. Verse 4 says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way that you treat them. Rather, bring them up with discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord." Children, obey your parents. Honor your father and mother. There's a promise in this. And it follows by saying, hey, parents, don't provoke your children. So in this passage, we see that there's a way that parenting is meant to operate. And it's going to require two things. One, that at times parents refuse to do, or that at times can overdo to try to correct the problem. And the second that is required in parenting is something that we often try to do through experience rather than wisdom that is acquired through Scripture. So in other words, we try to talk about how we've dealt with things. And we're going to dive into those things because it's a mouthful, but we're going to break them down in just a second. But before we dive into the two things that are required in parenting, I can't just move away from what was stated there. Parents, how you treat your kids will respond, or will affect in how they respond. If you deliberately provoke to the point of anger, I've been the recipient of this when I was in my household, the results that follow are based on what you contributed that led up to it. So you're kind of at fault too. This means that you have to be mindful in how we can be contributing to the issues in our relationship with our kids. Colossians chapter 3, verse 20 and 21 address the same thing. It gives the same command. Children, always obey your parents, for this pleases the Lord. And then verse 21 expands in what will likely result in the wrong conditions when we fail as parents. It says, "Father, do not aggravate your children, or they will become discouraged." Have you ever noticed how when we parent bad, the kids almost just get discouraged to where they just don't want to even try anymore? So understand that parents, you have some ability in influencing the outcome at home. You can provoke your children to anger by aggravating them and causing them to get discouraged and to go astray. Or you can be patient with them and teach them and lead them by example. What you do, your kids will follow. And sometimes they will even exceed. In a good way and in a bad way. So now with that out of the way, let me break down the two things that are required in parenting. And I'll start off by saying, well, it is good and essential to establish a meaningful relationship with your kids. No doubt about that. At times, those relationships will start to feel more like friendships, which is great. I love my kids, and quite frankly, I would say that they are probably my closest friends. Not probably, they are my closest friends. One of the things that we have to establish is that as close as it may feel to a friendship, your relationship is still different because you're still a parent. Within that family structure, you are the parent and you have the responsibility of leading them. Not trying to make them like you, you have the responsibility of leading them. And here's the next thing, disciplining them. And once again, because we're talking about things that are very, they can get blurred, I want to make a clear distinction between physical discipline, which is not the same as physical abuse. They're two very different things. One is done without self-control for the sake of physically hurting the child and relieving your frustration. The other is done not for the sake of hurting the child, but for correcting them, even in your frustration. And while both sound politically and culturally incorrect, there is a very clear distinction when one is aimed to inflict pain out of frustration and the other is aimed to inflict correction out of love. Two very different things. When I first moved up here from Texas, I remember hearing two statements that to this day stick with me. When dealing with adults that are pains, like they're not very easy to deal with, the statement was, the parent stopped one spanking too short. True statement. The second was, a parent evidently stated this, I can deal with the issues now, or the cops can deal with the issues later. Pretty good wisdom in those statements. So let me clarify that this is not suggesting that the solution to the problem is found in more spankings. But I do believe that one of the issues, not the sole issue, but one of the issues is found in a lack of discipline. And if we were to step back from our own experiences, because I understand that, I can personally understand that sometimes when we're growing up in a household where spankings is the answer for everything, and we have experienced maybe an extent to where it blurred the line to more of a physical abuse, you almost don't want to spank. I get that. But if we were to step back from our own experiences and look to wisdom and the blueprint for parenting, which is found in the Bible, this is what the Bible says. Don't fail to discipline your children. The rod of punishment won't kill them. Physical discipline may very well save them from death. Please make that clear distinction between abuse and discipline. They're very different things. Abuse will lead kids to the hospital. Physical discipline for the purpose of correction may very well spare your children from ending up in the hospital and being close to death. Now, it sounds drastic, right? I mean, that's one of those passages that seems really drastic, like, hey, it's going to spare them from death. So let me give you another example. Even if it doesn't lead to death, this is what Proverbs chapter 19, verse 18 states. Discipline your children while there is hope, otherwise you will ruin their lives. Okay, they don't die, but you're ruining their character. As parents, we have this short window that we are able to steer and to navigate children. It's a very short window. It goes quickly, which is the reason that Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6 encourages parents to direct their children onto the right path so that when they are older, they will not leave it. Here's a short window. Take advantage of it. Steer them in the right direction, because once 18 hits, guess what? The tricycle wheels are taken off. They're driving on 2, and now they're on their own. Make sure that they know how to drive it. And there is wisdom, right, in how we should discipline our kids. And wisdom in how we shouldn't discipline our kids. And it's there just in case we've failed miserably, we're new parents, or we're trying to continue to do the right thing. So as stated in the first week of the series, every day we're making decisions that are shaping our lives. Every single day. But one of the things that, having 6 kids and on a daily basis, we often take for granted is every single decision that we're making is also affecting and influencing them, because they're seeing how you're responding. And we often think about those little nuances and decisions as minor. As parents, you should consider that we are making decisions every day in our homes that are shaping the men and women that our children will or have become. We're making those decisions. We're leading. So if you're a kid or a teen, this sounds like you got the short end of the stick, because I just told your parents, hey, discipline your kids. But the other thing is, here's some wisdom and advice for you guys as well. And even for us who are older and still living with parents. And before we go into the next verse, I just want to state that wisdom is not there for us to like. It is there for us to apply to spare us from pain. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 11 says, "My child, don't reject the Lord's discipline and don't be upset when he corrects you. For the Lord corrects those he loves, just as the father corrects a child in whom he delights." Right? A father corrects their child because they want them to succeed. They want them to do well. And I love my kids enough that I want for them to succeed. It is because I love them that I correct them. Otherwise, I wouldn't care. Throughout my time in ministry, one thing that I have noticed and even shared with my kids, and it's caught their attention as well, is that working with teens and adults, sometimes those teens and adults that I talk to will share the things that they're struggling with. And sometimes as they're struggling with different things that are significant, the way that I handle it with those individuals is very different in how I would likely handle it with my kids. And there's this almost what seems like a double standard. It's okay for them to do, but it's not okay for me to do. And one of the things that I'm going to say, I'm not saying that I didn't care or love those teens or adults who are screwing up. It's not even saying that I'm okay with their choices. I'm not even okay with my choices at times. But the love for my own kids far exceeds my love for the teens or the adults that I've talked to. Not only that, but they're not my kids to discipline. I can't do anything about it. It's just kind of like, oh man, that really stinks, and where you find yourself in life. And there has to be a distinction. They're my kids, and they're not my kids. I'm going to be harder on my kids than I am going to be on other people's kids, because there's limitations as to how involved I can get. When I was growing up, there were times where the lines of discipline, as I shared, and the lines of frustration blurred the line. And as a child, I can tell you that I didn't enjoy it for a second. I hated it. And now with my kids, whether it's, discipline by taking away their phone or whatever that looks like now as they're getting older, the fact of the matter is I know that it's not enjoyable. The Bible is not oblivious to this. As a matter of fact, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11 clearly states that no discipline is enjoyable while it's happening, right? I mean, nobody ever says, man, I really enjoyed that spanking. Thank you. I'm grateful for it, right? Nobody says that. When things go bad, nobody says, I'm grateful for what I'm going through, right? No discipline is enjoyable while it's happening. It's painful. But afterward, there will be a peaceful harvest of right living for those who are trained in his way. Correction and discipline is not there for our enjoyment. It's there for our benefit. It's there for your kids' benefit. As a dad, of course I'm going to be harder on my kids than anybody else because I love them and I'm invested into the men and women that they will grow up to be one day. But here's the second thing that is required in parenting. It's not just about discipline. Sometimes that's the only thing that parents focus on is discipline. But the second thing is, are we leading in a way that is worth following? And what forms that framework for our instruction to them? How are we encouraging them? How are we advising them? Are we leading them from our broken experiences? Well, that's the way that my parents did it. I'm going to do it the opposite way. Or by wisdom that has shaped or redefined our experiences. Right? I've learned that, you know what? My parents did this and it didn't work for me, but the opposite is not necessarily true. I have to try to find a balance on what does the Bible say. In Proverbs chapter 4, verses 4 and 5, it says, "My father taught me, take my words to heart, follow my commands, and you will live. Get wisdom, develop good judgment, don't forget my words or turn away from them." As parents, we desire for our kids to take our words to the bank, right? Well, I'm telling you this because I love you. Take it to the bank. We want for them to listen and to live according to what we tell them. And we're like, don't ever lose sight of that, right? Keep on going. I told you, don't do that. And this is true whether it's good or bad. It doesn't really matter if it's good or bad advice. We want for our kids to listen to us. Because for the most part, and once again, I'm saying for the most part because it's not accurate all the time, as parents, most want what is best for our kids. Believe it or not, there's some parents that are just not, they just became parents. They really didn't measure up to that standard. Now, this is what I mean when I ask, what forms the conversation that you're having with your kids? What forms that framework of the instructions and the advice that you're passing down to your kids? And this is important. What is the most important thing for their lives? Is it their happiness, or is it what is objectively good for them? Are you encouraging them based on the life that you wish you had, or are you encouraging them in a life that is worth living? So let me ask again. What is defining the words that you are speaking into their lives? Husbands not only should be the spiritual leaders of the household and be invested in God, but the way that you lead your household and lead your wife should ultimately create that framework of how you and your wife are leading your kids. And this should be at the top of your list, right? So we're seeing, okay, Christ is the head of the church, and it's showing this illustration, Christ, the husband, the wife, the kids. Here's the issue. Typically it's the wife, the husband, God, then the kids. Or if not, it's God all the way to the bottom, the kids in the middle, and the wife at the top, and the husband in the middle. Are you seeing the dysfunction? Are you seeing why things aren't working? And I really don't care if this offends you, because this is the design. It's like if we were to have a cabinet, and you're trying to tell me that the drawers go on the top where there is no hinges or anything to go on, and I'm telling you, I don't care what you think. This is what the manual says. This is a design. And this is the design that we're getting, and it offends us because we want to do it a different way. It doesn't work. And when we try to lead by, well, this was my experience. This is what you should go for. This is what you should look for. This is what I think would make you happy. I don't care what would make you happy. What is going to give you a life that is worth living and is satisfying? And the way that we form that is by forming a prayer. And, in the Bible, there's this prayer, the Shema, and this is a call for Israel. And as we've talked about in the book of Revelation, Israel ultimately can be broken down into God's people, right? So it's anybody who is in Christ, a person of faith. And this is something that we could take to the bank. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. The emphasis is mine. We're going to be coming back to it. Just keep that in mind. And you must commit yourself wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. There it is. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are on the road, when you are going to bed and when you're getting up. Tie them on your hands and wear them on your foreheads as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Let me just simplify this. You can't lead someone to something or someone that you're not even following yourself. How can you lead your kids in godliness when you're not even godly yourself? Did you notice how it starts with you? And you must. It's this commitment of self. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength. And then it turns to the conversation at home. Talk to your children about it. Write them on the doorpost. Wear them on your hand and on your forehead. It's in the mind. It's constantly there in what we're doing and what we're thinking. Are you understanding that the Bible is giving us a very simple framework of how the house best operates with God's design in mind? When we lead the way God calls us to, and when our children follow, we find ourselves at peace at home. Now, as stated before, we're still broken people. And there will still be difficulties within the household because we're broken people and we're not always going to measure up to this. The question is, how do we handle those moments of friction at home? There was a question that was asked by one of the teens this week at youth group, and it was, what makes a Christian a bad Christian? And, one of the things I said is, it's a Christian who's not a Christian at all. And when it comes down to it, the fact of the matter, as broken Christians, we're still going to fail. We're still going to mess up. That doesn't make you a bad Christian. If you continue to live in that lifestyle, that's a different story, but deliberately, I should say. However, that's not a bad Christian. A bad Christian is one who doesn't know how to respond in their failure. If you're at home, understand that there will still be failure at home. How do you respond in that failure? Are we willing to lead in humility when we are wrong and discipline out of love? The greatest thing that you can strive for in parenting is raising kids who do what is right more than what makes them happy. Proverbs chapter 23, verse 15 and 16 say, "My child, if your heart is wise, my own heart will rejoice. Everything in me will celebrate when you speak what is right." Hearing my kids talk about things of faith, man, that just makes my day. And if you are in the stage of parenting, understand that the role that you're playing now, it shapes who your children will become. Once again, we're not always going to get it right. But when we screw up, here's the thing: lead by example, lead by humility. And some may believe that they're great parents. They aren't. If you can't realize that we're all broken people who mess up, you've got some work to do. However, our failure at leading at times doesn't excuse the choices that we're making. That goes both ways for teens and for adults. While we contribute to the person our children will be, here's the one thing that we have to understand: the person they become, or the individual that you've become, is not determined by your parents. So, once again, whether your parents are around or not, it doesn't matter, because even how they shaped the framework of, or even the foundation of some of the things that you do, you still have the choice to do better, to be different. As adults, we can at times find ourselves living in regret of the foolishness in how we treated our parents that are maybe no longer around, or maybe they are. Proverbs chapter 19, verse 26 summarizes it well. "Children who mistreat their father or chase away their mother are an embarrassment and a public disgrace." I love how the Bible is just so blunt and to the point. Whether your parents are around or not, once again, who you are, no doubt, is influenced to some extent by the experiences at home. But who you will become can ultimately be redefined by wisdom. Whether you have been a public disgrace or labeled an embarrassment, your story doesn't have to be defined by your past, but it can be rewritten by how you move towards the future. So finally, if you're a parent filled with regret, wishing that you could turn back time, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, that is not possible. But what is possible is changing in how we communicate with our kids from here on out. Lead by example. Don't stop praying for them. Let them see something different in you. While the amount of influence we play in their lives as they move out of the house changes, now we're maybe a little bit less influential in their lives. How you continue to live in light of the failures as parents who are now older will still have the ability to influence how they will respond. Let's pray.